Hi, I'm Tammy, and I'm 13 years old. Have you ever felt like you swallowed something alive? As if you have something inside you threatening your life? This story happened to me, and the feeling of it still haunts me. Watch this video to the end and find out what will happen to a person if they swallow a poisonous snake. My parents devoted their entire life to biology, so I was interested in exotic animals and insects since childhood. What ordinary children were afraid of were my favorite toys. And instead of bedtime stories, I like to listen to encyclopedias and scientific work of my mom and dad. I always wanted to have an exotic animal at home, but my parents were against it, saying that it could be dangerous and that they had enough of them at work. Until recently, my father was given a small and rare poisonous snake for his birthday. I was thrilled. Of course, I immediately wanted to play with it, but my dad stopped me. He placed the snake in the home terrarium and said that it should not be touched during the adaptation. And he forbade me to take it without permission because it was poisonous. I was upset, but still, I couldn't stand it, and my curiosity took over. Have you ever disobeyed your parents? The next day after my parents left for work, I snuck into my dad's office and played with the snake. I decided to name him Tony, so in secret, I continued to visit Tony every day. But over time, I got bored playing with it alone, and I wanted to show off the snake to my best friend Carl. I decided to prank him, and I really thought it would be fun, but my plan failed. We sat and played our favorite game. I told Carl I was going to get us something to eat, let Tony out of the terrarium, and carried it to my room without being seen. I thought Carl would get scared. We would laugh together and play with the snake. But the prank got out of control. When Carl saw the snake on his leg, he jumped up in horror, screamed loudly. His face turned completely white. He fell to the floor and he began to suffocate. Honestly, I didn't even know what to do, but it was necessary to act quickly. I found a brown bag in the kitchen, ran to Carl, and he started breathing into it, slowly coming to himself. I gave him a glass of water, he drank it, and started yelling at me. It turned out that he couldn't stand snakes, lizards, and all the alike. As a child, he was even allergic to them. He accused me of knowing about it and setting it up on purpose. But I had no idea that Carl had such a fear. We had a big fight. Carl took offense at me and slammed the door. I returned the snake to the terrarium before my parents noticed and went to my room. I was very sad that we had a fight because this has never happened in all of our friendship. So I had nightmares the next night. I was almost asleep, and in my sleep, I thought that something cold was lying on my stomach and beginning to crawl to my head. It crawled right into my mouth, and I couldn't even move. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. I was afraid, and what I saw and felt in the dream seemed very real. I was very scared and quickly ran to look at the terrarium, but it was empty. My legs began to shake, and I clutched my stomach and couldn't move. Was there a little snake inside me now? Just thinking about it made me feel sick, and I ran to the bathroom. Apparently, I didn't close the lid properly yesterday, and Tony just crawled out of the terrarium and into my mouth. Even in the morning, I felt something moving on my lips. It was just awful. I couldn't sleep, walk, or even eat. And it always seemed to me that there was a chill in my esophagus. Something alive. It was as if something cold-blooded had crawled all over it. More and more thoughts came into my head, and I couldn't handle them alone. So the next day at school, I found Carl, asked him for forgiveness, and told him what had happened to me. He was so shocked, as if he had quarreled with me. He started thinking about how to solve this problem. He was worried about me. It was nice, but it looked like he knew about it. I decided not to attach importance to his reaction. Carl told me to go to the doctor right away, started saying that it was very serious and we couldn't solve it ourselves. I burst into tears and said that I would never go to the doctor. I needed a friend's help. Are you afraid of doctors and hospitals? And then we remembered that Carl's mother was a biologist, and she had a very rare book on cold-blooded animals at home. Carl calmed me down, and we ran to his house right after school. We had to do everything before his mother arrived. We snuck into her office and started looking for the right book, and I was getting worse and very sick to my stomach. Carl was worried because his mom's office was a restricted area in the house, and he was always rushing me. But I couldn't move any faster. I was constantly dizzy from fear. Unexpectedly for us, the handle of the front door turned. Carl's mom came home early, and she found us in her office. She started yelling at us, and especially at Carl, and even threatened house arrest. But I couldn't let that happen. So I gathered my thoughts and told her everything. She hesitated and seemed less angry, and I thought she calmed down a little too quickly. Maybe she was just worried about me. She said that most likely I need to be examined by a doctor because the snake could damage my esophagus or even poison me. And since the snake was poisonous, it could dissolve in the stomach and the poison would get directly into my blood. It only made me feel worse. I knew it was a lost cause. Everything went too far. I would have to tell my parents. Carl's mother quickly arranged an appointment, and half an hour later, we were on our way to the hospital. I felt worse every minute. I blamed myself for everything. I lost a friend, hid everything from my father, and violated his ban. She said that she would have to tell my parents, but I decided that I would tell them myself. Meanwhile, my stomach was turning. I really thought that the snake poison was already in my blood. I was constantly sick in the car, and I barely made it to the hospital. I was already sitting in line, looking pale and scared, when Carl's mother said that I would probably get a gastroscopy, and if necessary, they would perform emergency surgery. I sat in the corridor and was trembling with fear. I was supposed to be called in for a checkup any minute. And then I saw my parents. They looked very serious and even angry, so I couldn't stand it. I jumped out of my chair and excused myself to my mom and dad. The fear of the examination, the operation, and the whole situation overwhelmed me even more. I immediately told my parents everything. And when I finished and opened my eyes, I saw my dad smiling gently at me. At first, I didn't understand why, and he showed me a jar with a snake. I was shocked. Did I just dream it up and almost drive myself crazy? How could this happen? Suddenly, Dad took the snake out of the jar and held it out to me, and I immediately jumped back, afraid that it might bite me and inject poison. But my father showed me that the snake had no teeth. I didn't understand what was going on, and my parents admitted that I was just being pranked, almost as much as I had pranked Carl. My parents said they wanted me to learn this lesson and never disobey them again for my own safety. Yes, it's hard not to learn. It turned out that Carl had told them all about my joke. I asked where had the snake from the terrarium gone. It turned out that my dad just took it to his lab. I was so glad I hadn't swallowed the snake that I forgot my parents and Carl had taught me a valuable lesson. I was surprised that I didn't notice anything, but apparently my imagination did everything for me, and I couldn't think of anything but the snake. I knew it was all for my own good. I could have hurt Carl with my joke, and my stupidity and curiosity could play a trick on me. Now I avoid my father's office. I try not to stick my nose and hands into everything. And for this behavior, my parents promised to give me my own terrarium with a water snake. If you liked the video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel. Be careful with your imagination, and have a good day!